It's 7 p.m. Tuesday, June 11th, here in Seoul.
Coming up on News Center tonight. The tourist boat finally surfaces nearly 2 weeks after it sank in the Danube, taking 24 lives. 4 bodies, 3 of them believed to be South Koreans, are found in the wreck.
President Moon Jae-in touts Finland's policies to nurture global startups as he agrees to boost bilateral ties with his Finnish counterpart.
Former First Lady Lee Hee-ho dies at the age of 97 after battling liver cancer. She was a lifelong political companion of her late husband and former South Korean President Kim Dae-jung.
And this year's consumer electronics show Asia kicks off in Shanghai amid an escalating tech war between China and the U.S. News Center begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center. Live from Seoul, I'm Han Da-eun.
And I'm Noah. Thank you as always for joining us this evening. Now let's begin with the latest on the tourist boat that sank last month in Budapest, killing around 24 South Koreans. Crews have managed to raise the boat to the surface of the Danube and more bodies have been recovered from inside. Let's
now connect with Arirang's Ko Ryun-hee for the details. Ryun-hee, fill us in.
Sure. Work to salvage the boat is underway, as is a search operation. And as you can see from the video footage, most of the boat is visible on the water surface now. The authorities, including Hungary's counterterrorism center, started raising it at around 7 a.m. local time. And more importantly, during the process, more bodies have been found in the wreckage. As of 7:45 a.m., 1 body had been found, believed to be the Hungarian captain. And South Korean news outlets are reporting that 3 South Korean bodies were found on the boat as well, and the identification process is underway. 1 is believed to be a child. So the previously announced numbers of deaths and casualties are likely to change in the hours to come. A total of 35 people were on the boat that day. 7 of them survived, and the rest are dead or missing. With the bodies newly found on the boat, the death toll is now raised to 24, with 4 still missing. And I do want to point out that the salvage operation itself is taking longer than expected. It was temporarily paused earlier in the day because unexpected damage was found on the boat's stern. So they had to attach an additional cable. The boat sank on May 29th almost immediately after a cruise ship hit it from behind while passing under Budapest Market Bridge.
Now, it seems like the salvage operation over in Hungary will continue further. Any announcement from the South Korean government?
Sure. Seoul's foreign ministry said on Tuesday that officials will try their best to find all the missing people. The ministry said that the work to salvage the boat is focused on preventing bodies from being swept away. Officials say Korea has requested that the Hungarian authorities thoroughly investigate the cause of the accident and punish the person responsible. According to Reuters, the captain of the cruise liner, a 64-year-old Ukrainian, is being held as a suspect. His lawyer said he is devastated, but that he did nothing wrong. That's all I have at this hour.
Thank you, Ryun-hee, for that update. Now let's hear more about the salvage operation and other remaining issues, this time straight from the Danube River. For that, we go to Zoltán Sibashegi, a foreign affairs correspondent at Euronews Hungary. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, welcome again from Budapest.
Now, efforts to lift the wreck began about 5 hours ago today. What are you hearing about the salvage operations now, particularly about the lifting process, as well as what the authorities have learned so far from the surfaced wreck?
There are developments in every second, really, because after a technical break, all the divers just entered to the body of the boat and they returned after a 20 minutes long mission. Still, we don't know what they found. Just we saw that them's helmet and clothes were full of mud. Actually, this salvage is taking 6 hours long now, but they need to lift it step by step. So the first was the Captain Bridge, what we could see in the early morning. And of course, we heard the news about the 4 new bodies, what they already could recover. During this salvage in this bridge of the captain, very probably they found the Hungarian captain of the boat, who was one of the most experienced captain here in the Danube, in the Budapest port. Also, what we could hear in the last few hours, that one of the 6-year-old child, she still wasn't identified, but most of the people saw that there was 1 minute, of memorial for one of the victims, and very probably it was the child. So what is going on now? What we know so far is that they need to lift it. You can see behind me the crane. This boat crane, looks like a kind of a pool. So it surrounds the wreckage. We can't really see the parts of the wreckage, so they lift it on the middle. During this operation, even one technician just fell in the water, but fortunately the mates of him, they could grab him and pull out to the ground. So it means that also the salvage, also the operation is really, really dangerous. So what we do now is step by step, first the bridge, after the first plan, and after the whole body of the boat will be pulled out to the surface. Now it's more or less 1.5 meters away from the surface, and now they are searching for the rest of the 4 victims and 4 bodies.
Now, judging from the current process, when is the salvage operation likely to be completed? And what are some of the remaining procedures after the salvage operation?
Actually, when they found the body, they transported away with motorboats, with small motorboats. And also the leader of the anti-terrorist organization center, János Hajdú, told that we need time. We can't tell that it takes 2 or 3 hours. The most important is that all the divers have to work in safe conditions. Also, the inner minister of Hungary joined to the salvage operation on a boat, so he's checking this operation personally. So now I can't tell how long does it take, but for sure the authorities would like to finish it today. There is 2 reasons: because the weather is totally clear and the weather is hot, so now it's a big difference than 2 weeks ago. Now it's summer in Budapest, it's 30 degrees. And of course, the other is that now the crane, now all the authorities, all the equipments are here, and they would like to finish as fast as they can. I could talk with one of the divers, for example, and it's an interesting situation and story, that he told that they are professional. They used to see dead bodies, corpse, and lift it to the surface. But the most difficult and most heartbreaking part, when they see the faces of the relatives, of the family, because behind me on the Margaret Bridge, they already closed one line, and it's full with relatives and with the police. So all along this shore, it's closed from the traffic, and the streets are full of with police and anti-terrorist authorities.
Now, Zoltan, what's the latest on the investigation of the Viking Sigyn's captain? We're hearing that he still denies the charges against him and is pushing for a bail.
Actually, now he is an assault rating because there was a bail, more or less 15 million forints, which is a quite huge amount. But because of the authorities, still during the investigation, he has to stay in the prison. What we know so far about his condition, that he is still refusing the allegations, and he talks just with his family. He's totally separated from everybody else. He is in the Budapest prison, so when he's walking on the garden, he's alone. He makes some notices, but he never shows anyone, because the only one thing is what he's doing. He's reading the newspaper, he's hearing the radio about the accident, and he's preparing himself for the trial. Actually, nobody knows what's gonna happen after. The only one thing what is sure, that he will stay in Hungary for long, and he's preparing for the trial.
Thank you, Zoltan, once again for your special reporting. Let's hope that the remaining victims can also be recovered soon. Zoltan Shibashegi of Euronews Hungary, live from Budapest for us tonight. Switching gears now, President Moon Jae-in says that Korea has much to learn from Finland in terms of promoting startup businesses. While on a trip to the Nordic country, the president said economic cooperation will be infinite when peace on the Korean peninsula is realized. Our Shin Se-min reports from Finland.
President Moon Jae-in says Seoul has a lot to learn from the motherland of the once mighty IT startup firm Nokia. While attending the inaugural event of Korea-Finland Startup Summit on the last day of his state trip to the Nordic country, President Moon said Finland is an inspiration for his country in terms of its abundance of innovative activities. Introducing Korea as a nation that sits in the middle of an economic structure centered on large conglomerates, he said Korea can greatly sympathize and that Korea hopes to realize innovation and inclusivity together with Finland by learning from the Nordic nation. President Moon said the two sides will strengthen their ties in building a startup ecosystem while jointly reacting to the fourth industrial revolution. He said the two have agreed to solidify their efforts on the healthcare front to adapt to the aging population. Korea's SMEs and Startups Ministry previously announced that it will set up 2 startup centers in Northern Europe next year, one in Finland and the other in Sweden, where entrepreneurs can better seek partnership opportunities with local firms. Prior to the event, President Moon met with Finnish Prime Minister, where the two agreed on promoting exchanges of people and goods between Asia and Europe. And the president had an ambitious prediction for the two sides' economic partnership, saying that when lasting peace on the Korean peninsula is realized, the two sides will see infinite economic cooperation and asked Finland to be part of Korea's dream of peace and mutual prosperity. With that, President Moon departs on the second leg of his trip in Norway, where his highly anticipated speech at the Oslo Forum is scheduled. There, the president is expected to use the symbolic stage of Oslo, known for giving out the Nobel Peace Prize, to echo the model of peace seen in the region. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Helsinki.
A 5-day public funeral service is being held for Lee Hee-ho, the widow of former South Korean President and Nobel laureate Kim Dae-jung. She died late Monday at the age of 97. Kim Min-ji reports.
Hundreds of people mourned the death of Lee Hee-ho, the wife of the late former President Kim Dae-jung, on Tuesday. A 5-day public funeral service is being held for Lee, and a memorial altar was set up at Yonsei Severance Hospital in western Seoul. Lee, who had been hospitalized while battling liver cancer, died late Monday at the age of 97. Prominent figures, including Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun and National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang, as well as ruling and opposition party lawmakers, paid their respects. Top presidential aides also visited, relaying President Moon Jae-in's condolences. South Korean citizens also came to pay their respects and remember the former First Lady.
I wonder how we will feel her absence as the mother of our country and as a pioneer of democracy. She suffered and overcame all sorts of hardships for her husband to eventually become the president.
I decided to visit because I felt empty hearing the news. It's really a shame to lose someone who devoted her whole life to democracy. I hope she rests in peace.
At the request of the funeral organizers, the South Korean government has also informed North Korea of Lee's death. Eyes are on whether Pyongyang sends a delegation to pay tribute, as it has done in the past for figures who contributed to inter-Korean relations. In her will, Lee wrote that she would pray for the Korean people and a peaceful unification of the two Koreas in heaven.
She thanked the people for their love for her husband, former President Kim Dae-jung, and herself. She added that she hopes the people love and find harmony with one another and live happy lives, and that she will pray for the Korean people and for peaceful unification.
Lee was born into a wealthy family in 1921 and later studied at South Korea's prestigious Seoul National University, as well as in the U.S., at a time when many women in Korea had limited access to education. During her life, Lee spared no efforts to improving women's rights in South Korea and promoting inter-Korean reconciliation and democracy. She was also a supportive companion to former President Kim. Many more are expected to come and pay their respects to the former First Lady over the next few days. She will be buried on Friday at the Seoul National Cemetery, where her husband was laid to rest a decade ago. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And as we heard in that report, the late First Lady was best known for advancing women's rights as well as democracy in South Korea. Our Choi Si-young takes a closer look back on her life.
As part of the first generation of the country's female activists, Lee Hee-ho stood at the forefront of safeguarding women's rights in South Korea. She organized one of the nation's oldest civic groups on women's rights and in 1989 helped to bring revisions to family law so that married women could get equal footing in dealings to do with inheritance, among others. In 1999, Lee also helped to usher in the monumental gender discrimination law that acted as a catalyst for subsequent court rulings in favor of women's rights otherwise overlooked in the past. She also stood by her husband and former President Kim Dae-jung, well known for his pro-democracy movement during the 1970s through the 1980s. In 1980, he helped to draw international attention to her husband, saving him from the death penalty sentenced under South Korea's then military dictatorship. Even on the day of her husband's death, he spoke of democracy.
행동의 양심으로 살아가기를 간절히 원합니다. 이것이 남편의 유지입니다.
He also exerted efforts to improve inter-Korean relations. In 2000, she accompanied her husband to Pyongyang for the first historic summit between the two Koreas and served as special envoy to the North in 2011 to send her condolences to the late Kim Jong-il. The former First Lady also served as the head of the Kim Dae-jung Peace Center, which was founded by her husband to promote inter-Korean reconciliation and world peace.
다음 세대 분단의 아픔을 물려주어서는 안 된다는 것을 생각했습니다.
More than a widow of a former president, late First Lady Lee is remembered as a great activist who advanced the values of democracy and women's rights while pushing the Korean peninsula an inch closer to peace. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
In other news, South Korea's Defense Minister Chung Kyung-do has vowed to do his best to recover as many remains of soldiers who fought in the Korean War. The pledge came after he visited a site in the DMZ today where a body believed to be of either an American or French soldier was recently found. He was accompanied by U.S. Forces Korea Commander General Robert Abrams and officials from the U.S. and French embassies. The body was excavated at Arrowhead Ridge, the site of one of the war's fiercest battles. The Defense Ministry said it's the first time during this excavation project, which started in April, that remains believed to be of a soldier from the US or France were discovered. An estimated 100 UN troops were killed there, with around 20 believed to still be buried. South Korea's exports plunged by more than 16% on year in the first 10 days of June amid slowing demand for semiconductors. Kim Hyo-sung with the details.
South Korea's exports between June 1st and June 10th fell 16.6% on year to a little over $10 billion. Data from the Korea Customs Service on Tuesday shows chip exports, which account for around a fifth of Korea's total exports, plunged nearly 31%. Shipments of home appliances and ships went up, but other major exports, including petrochemical goods and autos, all dropped. Exports to China, South Korea's #1 trading partner, shrank 27% on year. And shipments to the U.S., the EU, Japan, and the Middle East also dropped. Korea's imports fell 11% to $12.5 billion, leading to a trade deficit of $2 billion.
Korea's exports fell on slowing global growth. Chip exports in particular dropped mainly due to falling chip prices. But as the U.S. China trade spat escalates and the Trump administration's ban on Huawei continues to spread, it looks like chip demand is unlikely to pick up as IT companies are cutting or postponing investments.
Already, the average price of DRAM chips, a type of memory chip used in PCs and servers, fell 6% on month to $3.7 in May, about half the price of their historic high recorded last September. But slowing demand is likely to further drive down prices, with global market research company DRAM Exchange forecasting a price fall of over 10% in both the third quarter and the fourth quarter. South Korea's exports have fallen on year for 6 straight months since last December, With first 10 days of June showing a double-digit fall in exports, it's highly likely that they will fall for a 7th straight month. Kim Dae-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea has reclaimed the #1 spot in terms of new shipbuilding orders for the month of May, leapfrogging China for the first time in 3 months. According to Clarkson's research on Tuesday, South Korean shipbuilders won 16 new orders, including some LNG carriers. Those orders added up to 640,000 compensated gross tons, accounting for 60% of total new orders worldwide. China ranked second with 270,000 CGTs, followed by Japan's 60,000. China still has the most orders in total, though, for the first 5 months of this year, with over 4 million CGTs, followed by Korea's 2.8 million. This year's Consumer Electronics Show Asia kicked off in the Chinese city of Shanghai on Tuesday amid a brewing tech war between China and the U.S. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Some 550 companies are participating in this year's Consumer Electronics Show Asia, introducing their latest product and service developments. This year's show focuses on the latest innovations in 5G internet connectivity, artificial intelligence, transportation technology including connected and autonomous cars, and technologies concerning virtual and augmented reality. Some of the biggest attention grabbers are Beijing-based AI computing startup Horizon Robotics, which hauled in some $600 million in investments from the Chinese subsidiary of Korean conglomerate SK Group earlier this year, as well as Chinese AI company iFlyTech. Also, Chinese tech giant Huawei Technologies, which has been blacklisted by the U.S., introduced a stellar AI product that can control all daily hardware devices, including mobile phones, TVs, personal computers, and glasses. Huawei's chief strategy officer Xiao Yang gave a keynote speech unveiling the company's plans to become a front-runner in the field of Internet of Things based on 5G and AI technologies. He said all big tech changes are like the game to the courageous, and the one that survives the brutal competition will be on the forefront of the new chapter in history, while the loser will become isolated and walk out. Although he didn't mention the U.S. blacklisting directly, the remark is seen as Huawei's willingness to continue developing its products despite the unprecedented external challenges it faces right now. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And with the U.S.-China trade war raging on, the Chinese government has confirmed reports that it has summoned global tech companies for talks, including South Korea's Samsung Electronics. Beijing does not want these companies going along with the U.S. and cutting off Chinese firms like Huawei. Hong Yu reports.
Amid the escalating trade war between the world's two biggest economies, global tech companies, including South Korea's Samsung Electronics and Microsoft from the U.S., are under pressure from Beijing not to join Washington's sanctions on Huawei. The New York Times reported this week that Beijing summoned tech companies from South Korea, the U.S., and the U.K. this month to warn they may face consequences if they cooperate with the Trump administration's ban on supply technology and parts to Chinese tech firms. The meeting was held last week shortly after China's Commerce Ministry announced it is to release its own blacklist of so-called unreliable foreign firms in the near future. At a press briefing on Monday, China's foreign ministry did not elaborate on details, but said a meeting between Chinese authorities and representatives of global firms is nothing out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to impose additional tariffs on Chinese goods if Chinese President Xi Jinping does not attend the G20 World Leaders meeting in Osaka later this month. In an interview with CNBC on Monday, President Trump called Xi an incredible guy and admitted he would be very surprised if his Chinese counterpart did not show up. But when asked if extra tariffs would take effect immediately if the Chinese leader does not travel to Japan, Trump said yes. The remarks came as the Trump administration had been repeatedly stating that the two leaders will meet on the sidelines of the G20 summit. President Trump has put tariffs on 35% to 40% of Chinese imports into the U.S., but if talks fall apart, he says, the remaining 60% will also be hit with hefty tariffs. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Scientists all over the world have been working to create a supercomputer that can solve the most complex problems using concepts of quantum physics, where more than one reality or state of being can exist. The world's first commercial quantum computer has landed in Seoul today to mark the progress made after decades of research in the field. Our Oh Soo-young has the story.
It looks like a golden chandelier, but you're not seeing shards of glass. It's the model of the world's first commercial quantum computer on display in the Korean capital on Tuesday. Quantum computers are being developed around the world to process information and solve problems that are extremely difficult or even impossible for standard computers.
Maybe something that might take 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years on a classical computer, you could do in a few minutes, a few hours, or maybe a few days with a quantum computer. And we think that will happen across a range of industries. It could be the creation of brand new materials. They could be household materials, but they could be new metal alloys for cars, for airplanes. They could eventually be new drugs for medicines. Financial services is another area, so banks are very interested in that.
The IBM Q may have provided a conceptual turning point, expanding quantum computing beyond the walls of the lab. But when it comes to outperforming a regular computer on meaningful tasks or achieving the so-called quantum advantage, most scientists say we still need more time. Normal computers store data in binary form as either ones or zeros. However, quantum computers use a unit called a qubit, which can exist as a 1 and a 0 at the same time in what's called a state of superposition. As both possibilities exist, this increases the amount of data the computer can store or process, meaning it can run through all possible outcomes at once. However, it's not just the number of qubits that matter. Keeping them in a workable state or coherence time is one of the biggest hurdles in quantum computing.
We have to convert the number of qubits into effective number of qubits. So what is important is a connection between the qubits. So if you have more connections between the qubits, then you have higher capacity to handle more complex problem. We envision that the real practical applications will be found once the machines achieve 100 qubit level.
Despite the complications, researchers and firms are striving to harness the quantum advantage, which could take the AI revolution and data clouds to a whole new realm.
Already, the flow of data across countries is adding more to the global economy compared to the trade of actual manufacturing goods. And that'll also form a basis for solving society's biggest problems, like how to better cure cancer, how to better forecast weather so we can actually save lives.
While quantum computers are unlikely to replace standard ones for decades, if ever, scientists say it's clear that a new era of computing has begun. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
It looks like a growing number of Korea's older generation are more actively pursuing their unaccomplished ambitions. Our Lee Min-sun today files a special report on seniors who are working in their professional fields regardless of their age.
An art exhibition at a gallery in Seoul this May featured drawings by a painter who's been in the field for the better part of a century. At the age of 103, Kim Byung-gi is the oldest living and working Korean painter to hold an individual exhibition, but he says he's still full of inspiration and desire.
As a professional artist, there is no retirement. Whether I'm 80 or 90 years old, I'm just doing what I do. I cannot think of retiring. I bet my life on art, so there's no retirement.
Kim started his art career as a teenager, and since then, he's become a part of Korea's modern art history. In fact, he was among those introduced the country to abstract art.
When abstract art was first introduced to Korea, I contributed to building the theoretical background. And after Korea was liberated, I tried to stand in the middle to build an artistic foundation while society was ideologically divided.
After that focus on abstraction, Kim says he's gone back to the manual and basic lines of his recent works, using a bolder choice of colors that go beyond the dark ones he used to use. Kim hopes to be remembered not just for his advanced age, but as a painter and individual witness to history. Meanwhile, here's a fashion model who at the age of 64 just debuted last year. Kim Chil-doo has captivated the fashion world with his unique appearance and dramatic story. He used to make a living running small restaurants and working construction.
When I was in my 20s, I had dreamed of becoming a model, and actually I had won a modeling contest. But because my family was opposed to it and I had financial difficulties, I gave up that dream.
After talking to his daughter, he decided to go for it again. And less than a year later, he made his debut at one of the biggest fashion events in Asia, Seoul Fashion Week, and is apparently one of the top senior models.
It's not like I have an outstanding talent or anything, but I just found my dream and talent in modeling a bit later. I think everyone has their own talent, but it's just a matter of how quickly you find it. I think anyone has a chance to achieve a new dream.
After achieving his long-delayed dream, Kim has set his sights on an even bigger goal of debuting at one of the 4 major fashion events in the world in Milan, Paris, London, or New York. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
The latest trends in medical care and beauty are being revealed to medical experts, visitors, and buyers in Seoul this week. The 8th International Medical Aesthetic Conference has invited more than 1,500 people from 23 member countries, including South Korea, Japan, Singapore, and Malaysia. The event, organized by the Asia Medical Aesthetic Exchange Association, provides the attendees the opportunity to share new technology, knowledge, and information in the field of aesthetic surgery and medical equipment. There are also symposiums, academic conferences, exhibitions, and award ceremonies taking place. The event is Asia's largest beauty industry and medical technology exchange organization, with over 2 million members around Asia.
The U.S. House Armed Services Committee has reportedly authorized a clause in a new defense budget bill that blocks any move to reduce the number of U.S. forces in South Korea. Radio Free Asia reported Monday that the clause, initially left out, was added in a revision to the bill for the next fiscal year. The bill states that the minimum threshold must not fall below 28,500, which is the current number of troops stationed in South Korea because of the continued threats from North Korea. The move is believed to be aimed at preventing the Trump administration from downsizing the U.S. military's presence on the peninsula. Looking to ride the wave of enthusiasm for the South Korean coach of Vietnam's national football team, Samsung is releasing a Vietnam-only limited edition Galaxy S10 Plus featuring coach Park Hang-seo. It'll go on sale on Sunday, priced at $1,000 US. In a new prism silver color, the model comes in special packaging with an illustration of Korea's Vietnam football hero. South Korean astronomers have discovered a mid-sized black hole at the core of a small galaxy 10,000 times the mass of the Sun. A research team at Seoul National University said today that they managed to measure the black hole at the center of galaxy NGC 4395, providing strong evidence that intermediate mass black holes do exist. The groundbreaking discovery was made by measuring the velocity of gas clouds swirling around the black hole, as well as the distance between them using light echoes based on Newton's laws. Local game maker Netmarble will release its new mobile game BTS World globally on June 26th. The launch excludes China, as it has been reluctant to grant approval for South Korean game companies since 2017. BTS World is a storytelling simulation game in which players help the K-pop band grow from trainees to global sensations. That has been your 3-minute news flash.
The capital's daytime high went up 5 degrees more than yesterday thanks to sunny skies.
However, other parts of the nation had to deal with rain. Let's get more from our Michelle Park at the Weather Centre. Michelle.
Good evening, guys. Today was warmer than yesterday, but a partial blanket of clouds kept the mercury from rising too high. Now prepare for the heat tomorrow as hotter conditions are expected across the peninsula. However, keep in mind if you are in the south, sporadic showers are expected throughout the day during the sunny day, now due to the instability in the atmosphere. Now, the cool easterly wind will keep the temperatures lower than the seasonal norms. Now, Seoul, Gwangju, and also in Busan will be waking up to 16 degrees Celsius and warmer for Jeju, which will kick off to 18 degrees. And the northern parts of the peninsula will be hotter than the south tomorrow. Seoul and also Chuncheon will mark up to 28 degrees, while Busan and Jeju will hit up to 24 and 23 degrees respectively. Keep in mind the temperature differences between the morning and the daytime highs. And the daytime highs are actually expected to be bearable as the temperatures will be remaining in the high 20s this week. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That wraps up this edition of Arirang News. Thank you as always for watching.
News in depth is coming up next, so don't go away.